Aw, shit. Get your tea and your popcorn because this is going to be a good one. Welcome to part two of my pretty privilege versus medium ugly analysis. So, we're going to be talking about the difference in lifestyle and mindset. So, number one, medium ugly women, the reason that I use that term medium ugly is because I don't like to call women straight up ugly. I don't like saying that. Like, "Oh, you're ugly." No, you're probably not ugly. You're probably medium. And some people would call it medium ugly. I think that people who are truly ugly are people who have actual deformities and stuff. So that's why I use the phrase medium ugly, but I've noticed there's this pattern where a lot of women who pretend to have pretty privilege, you can always tell that they don't actually have pretty privilege because they enjoy seeing other pretty women competing with each other. They enjoy seeing other pretty women beefing with each other. They enjoy seeing pretty women suffer. So why would somebody enjoy seeing a pretty girl suffer if she herself is a pretty girl? Well, it's because she can't relate. And I notice a lot of people, they get very triggered by this channel because they watch my content and then they find out, oh shit, I actually can't relate to what the Exoticals are talking about. So we see this pattern where you've got these women coming online and creating YouTube channels, pretending that they have all this pretty privilege and all this knowledge. But then when you actually listen to their experiences, it never aligns with the majority of the pretty privileged experience. Women who I consider to be just average and not have pretty privilege, these are women who think that only one feature is what gives them the pretty privilege. So anytime you hear somebody saying things like, oh, well, your pretty privilege comes from a particular skin tone or it comes from having a particular body type, that's how I know that that's all they have. It's like, no, just because all she has is her body, that doesn't mean that she has pretty privilege. She's emphasizing body types because she doesn't have the face card. She doesn't have the healthy natural hair. She doesn't have the healthy skin. She doesn't have the straight white teeth. She doesn't have all of the other markers of what I consider to be pretty privilege. So that's why you'll see some creators emphasizing just one feature. They'll be like, oh, this body type, if you have that, then that means you have pretty privilege. Like if you're skinny, then you have pretty privilege. No, if you're skinny, then you have thin privilege. But just because someone is skinny, it doesn't mean, oh, you're pretty, and then somebody else who's a size medium, she's going to be ugly because she's a little bit bigger. So women who are not actually pretty privileged, they seem to have this hierarchy thinking, and hierarchy thinking is a sign of insecurity. Anytime you see somebody trying to create a hierarchy, they're doing that to soothe their own inferiority complexes. So they're trying to get a one up on you. And it's usually the medium ugly women who are the most competitive, right? Because they don't have a pedestal. So what are they competing for? They're competing for that pedestal. They're competing for the social status of having pretty privilege. So they're trying to create these hierarchies so they can put themselves as high up on the hierarchy as possible. So that's why they say things like your body type determines your privilege, or if a man texts you back, that determines your privilege. They're trying to figure out ways to incorporate their own experiences into what it means to be pretty. So it's a way of validating themselves. And anytime I hear a woman talking like that, all I'm thinking is, okay, who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? Because a pretty privileged woman with an internal locus of control, she doesn't have to seek the validation about her body or about her face or from the male gaze, because a pretty privileged woman is already treated as pretty privileged in her everyday life. And in a lot of cases, pretty privileged women have had pedestals ever since childhood or ever since their school days. So I think that some women, they were always like medium ugly. And so maybe they're trying to level up. Maybe they are medium ugly and they want to feel like they have pretty privilege. And so they feel like their social climbing tactic is going to have to be competing with other women. Medium ugly women have a scarcity mindset. They have a scarcity mindset about men. They have a scarcity mindset about beauty. There's this mindset of there can only be one. You know, there's only one way to be beautiful. There's only one skin tone that's beautiful. There's only one race of women that's beautiful. And then sometimes I've seen some people, they try to use like the 1 to 10 rating system, kind of like how the red pill does. They use the 1 to 10 rating system. They use the golden ratio, which is what the red pill also tries to use. And they don't understand that there is no such thing as a person without flaws. So the golden ratio, even though a lot of people like the golden ratio, I don't believe that the creators of the golden ratio are the smartest people in the world and they don't have biases. Everybody has different biases. So beauty is not a monolith, but women who don't have beauty, they feel like beauty is a monolith. And so that's why they're trying to compete for that title. They feel like pretty privilege, it's a title to be handed out. And so they have to fight tooth and nail to make sure that you are viewed as ugly, because it makes them feel beautiful knowing that you're viewed as uglier than them. And have you ever noticed it's always the non-privileged people who argue the most about who has that privilege? It's always non-pretty privileged people who are arguing back and forth about whether or not you're pretty. And that's why I talk about having an internal locus of control, because it's like, you don't get to tell me whether or not I'm pretty. I'm not seeking your validation. You have no social power over me. You cannot give me pretty privilege or take it away, because there's nothing that you can give me in life. Another thing about medium ugly women is that they're only socially desirable in very specific contexts. So that's why I just say that they're medium ugly. They're not actually ugly. So if they go to a certain sector, then maybe they would be treated a little bit better, but they don't have what I call cross-cultural appeal. So I don't really believe in the concept of universal beauty, or like, there is one end-all be-all standard of beauty. But medium ugly women, they do not have cross-cultural appeal. So maybe they're only considered cute back in the trailer park in their hometown. That's the only place where they're considered cute. So it's almost like they're a big fish in a small pond. And so when they come across women in the exotical space who have had pretty privilege at school, pretty privilege in their family, pretty privilege in their ethnic group, pretty privilege in the modeling industry, in the social media industry, when they come across women like us who have a multifaceted pretty privilege experience, it gets them very triggered because they feel like they're not on the same level. But instead of leveling up themselves, they'd rather try to tear us down. So that's why you see a lot of women who get really enraged and they try to make all these videos talking about how ugly we are. And that's another thing too. Calling a pretty woman ugly, that's not going to cancel her pretty privilege, because she already has thousands of experiences throughout her lifetime that have confirmed her beauty. So she's already been treated as having pretty privilege for the past 20 years of her life. So one random person trying to say that she's ugly, that's not going to stop her from living her best life. Number 2, medium ugly women have self-esteem that is externally reinforced by compliments, attention, favors, and success tied to their looks. So they need the external reinforcement. This is why you hear a lot of average women overemphasizing the male gaze, because they have that external locus of control. So they need the male gaze in order to prove to themselves that they are beautiful. So that's why a lot of them get very ticked off. That's why you'll have these scenarios where, like, have you ever had a friend who's comparing how many guys hit on you? She's comparing that to how many guys hit on her. These are the women who count how many likes you have. They're counting how many text messages you have. They're counting your followers or subscribers. They're trying to use specific metrics to place themselves on a hierarchy alongside you. Well, that's because she has an external locus of control. So that's how you know that she truly knows that she doesn't have pretty privilege. Because if she already knew that she had pretty privilege, she would know that even if people ignore me, I'm still pretty. Even if I don't have any social media at all, I'm still pretty. A lot of medium ugly women, they stereotype us pretty privileged women as constantly being in the public eye, and we're just sitting on our phones texting men for hours, and we're just all over social media. No, anyone who's actually pretty privileged knows that pretty privileged women are not a monolith. There are plenty of pretty women who don't have any social media. There are pretty women who do not want to be in the public eye at all, because they don't have to be. They still get validation in their everyday life. So they don't have the same drive to try to prove themselves to other people. Medium ugly women are obsessed with proving their beauty to others. They want to try to prove themselves to us pretty privileged women. They want to prove, hey, I belong with you guys. I'm just as pretty as you. So their self-esteem is conditional. Have you ever heard people talk about unconditional love? I talk about like unconditional self-love. I also think there's a such thing as having unconditional self-esteem. Pretty privileged women, we have a lot more unconditional self-esteem. So even if we're at work and everybody's ignoring us, they're not complimenting us, we're not gonna suddenly have low self-esteem because of that. But a woman who's already medium ugly and has that conditional version of beauty, she has a conditional self-esteem. These are the women who, when their hair and makeup and all that stuff is done, maybe they do have more self-esteem. But then as soon as you take it off, their self-esteem goes out the window. Have you ever met a girl like that? Her self-esteem flip-flops, and it's directly correlated to how many beauty enhancements she has. It's correlated to like if a man is with her or not. So she feels pretty when a man picks her, but then when that same man dumps her, she feels ugly. When the same man cheats on her, she feels ugly. And then they'll try to project that onto you. That's why you hear a lot of medium ugly women joining the red pill space, and then they'll make comments like, oh, well, you couldn't keep a man. That's why you're mad. Well, she's saying that because that's how she feels beautiful, is by keeping a man. The only way she could feel beautiful is by getting married to a man and staying married with him. That's why you'll see these women, they make fun of divorced women. They'll make fun of somebody who goes through a breakup, or they'll be like, oh, well, your light skin couldn't keep him. Being a preference couldn't keep him. So they're obsessed with the failures of preferences, or they're obsessed with like quote unquote preferences being abused. And it's like, well, why would you be making fun of preferences if you yourself are a preference as well? Why would you be making fun of a pretty privileged YouTube channel if you yourself can relate to that same content? So do you see how they expose themselves? Number 4, medium ugly women have the fear of losing their value. So there's this fear of aging. There's a fear of abandonment. They're afraid of men rejecting them. So they try to project that onto you, like, oh, you're going to die alone. Okay, that's a person that does not have pretty privilege, or a man that does not have handsome privilege. Those are the wounds of somebody whose looks have caused them to be rejected. So medium ugly people, they actually feel way more pressure to stay beautiful. They feel way more pressure to try to measure up to you. Because remember, I talked about how, especially when it comes to exoticals, most people want to date us or create us. They either want to date someone with our phenotype, or they want to date interracially and create someone with our phenotype. So we don't even have the same like wounds that a lot of them have. So medium ugly women, they have dealt with a lot more social rejection than pretty privileged women. One of the aspects of pretty privilege is you don't experience as much rejection for your physical appearance. So because they've been rejected more, they feel way more pressure to try to measure up. So these are the women who try to study your beauty routine, or they try to like expose you or whatever. You know those snark pages, like the influencer snark pages, or like all of those Instagram pages where they're like exposing celebrities for getting a nose job or something. So these types of people are the quote unquote medium uglies. These are people who they want to study pretty privileged women's beauty routines, and they want to study how pretty privileged women enhance their beauty even more. And then it makes them feel better about themselves because they can tell themselves, oh, well, their beauty is fake, so they're a fraud. Have you ever noticed that? There's always an agenda of a medium ugly person to try to convince others that you are a fraud. They want to convince others that you shouldn't receive pretty privilege because, your beauty is fake. And the bottom line is, whether your beauty actually is fake or real doesn't seem to matter, because society worships beauty. Society still worships beauty. There's a multi-billion-dollar beauty industry. So people don't ask themselves, oh, wait, is she wearing makeup? Oh, she must be ugly. Only incels and people who don't have access to beauty, those are the only ones who get mad about stuff like that. So medium ugly women, they resort to things like doxing or stalking, or like, the people that take the paparazzi pictures and they try to zoom in on the person's butt, like, oh, she has a bad BBL, or like she has all this cellulite. So people that do stuff like that, they want to take away your pedestal. They're mad that you're being worshipped. They're mad that you're being pedestalized. They're mad at the fact that you are receiving admiration. Medium ugly people, they don't get the same level of admiration as an actual pretty privileged person. When you are pretty privileged, People want to create children that have your phenotype. People want to have babies with you so that the children have your phenotype. People try to look like you. So maybe they get a surgery or something, or maybe they tan their skin or bleach their skin to look like yours. So all of those things are a part of being somebody else's beauty standard. So if somebody is medium ugly, they are not anybody else's beauty standard. So they have to try to pretend that they are, because it's all a part of wanting to fit in. They feel excluded from pretty privilege, but instead of just working on themselves or doing what they need to do to fit their own internal beauty standard, they would rather use divide and conquer tactics as well. So that's number 6. Medium ugly women, they love to divide and conquer pretty privileged women. So these are the ones who they create those pages online where it's like, who's prettier, Beyonce or Aaliyah? Who do you like, light skin or dark skin? Oh, well, she has curly hair, so she's prettier than you. You have type 4 hair. You have an afro, so your hair's nappy and ugly. So they want to triangulate us pretty privileged women against each other because they want us to have that same scarcity mindset that they have. They want to trick us into thinking that beauty is a monolith. We know damn well that there's more than one kind of beauty, and there is no end-all, be-all beauty standard. There isn't. It's not the golden ratio. It's not the 1 to 10 scale. It's not a certain body type, because pretty privilege is still based on social constructs. Anything within the realm of sociology always is going to have some subjectivity to it. So if you hear somebody trying to sell you based on things like quote unquote science, like in the red pill space, they do this a lot. In the red pill and kind of the incel spaces, they will show a picture of somebody's face and they'll be like, oh, well, Margot Robbie, she's a 6 out of 10. Because if you look at her face compared to the golden ratio, she only meets it by 60% or 50%. And it's like, okay, even if that were true, that her face doesn't meet the golden ratio, well, she still has more pretty privilege than 90% of the population. So you're negating your own talking point. You're trying to promote this narrative of, oh, if you don't meet XYZ standard, then like you're not going to have pretty privilege. And we all know that that's false. Whenever somebody is giving you pretty privilege, they're not thinking to themselves, okay, how pretty are you? You don't have to be the most beautiful woman in the world to receive pretty privilege. So the hierarchy thinking, it doesn't matter. That's a part of why I never supported hierarchy thinking, because even if you are the number one person in the world, you know, let's say you're the most beautiful woman in the world. Okay, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're going to get more money than everyone else? No, because we know that there are plenty of women who you probably think look better than someone who's more famous than them. So it's not about the hierarchy of who has more privilege. What people are trying to get at is they want to get the treatment of that privilege. So if you are being treated like a pretty privileged woman, then you have pretty privilege, and that's all that matters. But medium ugly women, they try to put pretty women in this invisible competition. And also, medium ugly women are in a one-sided competition with you as the pretty woman, because you are their beauty standard. So that's why you see a lot of smaller YouTube channels that are in competition with the exotical space, because even though they won't admit it, they know that us exoticals meet their internalized standard of beauty. So that's why they feel so competitive with us. That's why a lot of them are like secretly watching us. They want to watch how we move. They want to try to mimic us. That's a part of the psychology of a woman who's medium ugly. She tries to mimic the pretty privileged woman. She tries to do all this performative stuff. She's trying to perform being a pretty woman rather than actually having the identity of a pretty privileged woman. So anytime I come across a woman and she doesn't have the actual mindset of a pretty privileged woman, I know that she's lying about her privilege. And I'm not saying that that makes her ugly, because a lot of medium ugly women are on a glow up journey. So they're on the journey of trying to attain more beauty. And it's like, okay, if you want to attain more beauty, have a seat in my comment section where you belong. Sit in the comment section and learn from the pretty privileged women. Because biting the hand that feeds you, that's not a good way of social climbing. And when it comes to this argument of the male gaze, like, oh, if you're in a relationship, you must be more pretty. No, relationship dynamics have more to do with power. A lot of men like to dominate and subjugate women. A lot of men like having power and control. So sometimes medium ugly women, they're more passive in their romantic relationships. So they let the guy treat them like shit because she only feels beautiful when that guy's in a relationship with her. So sometimes you will see men going out of their way to go after the average women. They go after the medium ugly women because they know that those women will tolerate more of their BS. They know that the medium ugly women will pay 50-50. Medium ugly women will pay for everything. She will accept his dusty behavior. So that's why I don't think that the male gaze or like your relationship status, I don't think that's a very accurate measure of pretty privilege. I think that the male gaze is a good source of micro validation. You know, you can have micro validation from the male gaze or social media or whatever you want. But as far as basing your entire self-esteem around it and centering your self-esteem around men, you are prepped and primed to be narcissistically abused. So medium ugly women, they do have a tendency of being more passive in their relationships. And a lot of them get pursued by a lot of low quality men. And a lot of low quality men, they like having the medium ugly woman as kind of like his fallback woman. So he's going to go 50-50 with Miss Medium Ugly while he's building himself up or saving up the money so that he can actually pursue that OnlyFans girl, or, you know, so he can save up that money so he can pay for the girl that he truly likes. And let's talk about sex symbols as well, like pretty privilege versus sexualization. I've never seen a sex symbol that did not also have pretty privilege. So a lot of the women that people try to argue against, like, oh, Ruby Rose is an example of someone who sexualizes herself. Okay, Ruby Rose has a face card. You know, she has healthy natural hair, healthy skin, straight white teeth. She has a lot of markers of cross-cultural beauty. So any woman that's even seen as a sex symbol, if she does sexualize herself, she's using the sexualization alongside the pretty privilege. And a lot of medium ugly women, they can't do that. So they have to show, like when a medium ugly woman posts on Instagram, for example, she has to emphasize her butthole instead of emphasizing her face. Or maybe she crops her face out of the entire photo. She crops her face out of the photo, or like the main attraction in her photo is like her boobs or something else besides her face. She doesn't want to show her face. She doesn't want to show her hair. She doesn't want to show her teeth. She doesn't want to show everything about herself. She doesn't have the full package. So people want to talk so much about how, oh, well, so-and-so is not that pretty because she doesn't have this marker of beauty. It's like, okay, so that sounds rich coming from someone who themselves does not have the full package of the beauty that they claim we need to have as exoticals. And not to mention the fact that different women have different internalized standards of beauty. So if your standard of beauty is being fucked up in the face and then having a nice butt, okay, fine. So then why would you be mad at me? You know, why would you be mad at somebody else who has a different type of pretty privilege? That's how I know that those women, they truly don't feel like they're receiving the pretty privileged lifestyle. You could be the most privileged person in the world, but none of it matters if you're just locked up in your apartment 24/7. You're not going after your dreams. You're not actually living the soft life that you've always wanted. So what was the point? And I think that's one of the main frustrations of medium ugly women. A lot of medium ugly women have the potential to have actual pretty privilege. They do. They have the potential of pretty privilege because remember, beauty enhancements, they just enhance the beauty that's already there. So even if you're talking about plastic surgery and nose jobs and stuff, a nose job isn't going to help someone look cute if their whole entire jawbone structure is fucked up. A nose job's not going to fix that. So that's why I feel like it's stupid for people to only argue about the beauty enhancements. Because if there was no beauty there, then there's nothing to be enhanced. So medium ugly women, these are the women who they have the potential to have the pretty privilege. Or in some cases, they do have some version of beauty. They have a version of pretty privilege and they don't realize it. Maybe their environment, they're in a bad environment. Or they're surrounded by people who don't like their version of beauty. But again, that's not pretty privileged women's fault. You know, that's not our fault. That's not our problem that you were bad at social climbing. That's not our fault that your beauty didn't get you anywhere. And so now you're mad because the exoticals that we're able to talk about beauty, and we don't even have to come on here and show ourselves. We don't have to prove how pretty we are. People know just based on our talking points that we have pretty privilege. We don't even have to come on here and show our faces or, you know, make sure that from day one we're putting up as many pictures as possible to try to prove our beauty. No, a lot of women in the exotical space, we're just like, look, this is my experience, take it or leave it. Another lifestyle difference with medium ugly women is that they attract a lot of men who want to be the pretty one in the relationship. Have you ever been around those types of like pretty boys where he's one of those pretty boys where he likes being the pretty one in the relationship? He likes being the prize. That's why sometimes you'll see these men go after these medium women. You'll see these guys who maybe they have a very nice body. Maybe he's like, looks like a model. And then he goes after this woman where it's like she's nowhere near his level of attractiveness in his own eyes. So a lot of men will pursue the medium ugly women a lot because they feel like they have power over those women. The medium ugly women make him feel more dominant. The medium ugly women make him feel more masculine. He gets more praise from medium ugly women. He gets more pedestalization from medium ugly women. So this is why you see a lot of medium ugly women being around a lot of men, because, you know, those medium ugly women are male centered, and then the pretty boys who are female centered, or they want cheap female validation, they will settle for the medium uglies and utilize those women as placeholders. So it's like, it's laughable when I hear a medium ugly woman say that the male gaze is the whole reason behind her pretty privilege, because you're actually exposing yourself. You're exposing that you don't actually have pretty privilege, because pretty privileged women have leverage. So we have options. So we can choose to be in a relationship, or we can choose to dump that guy, because we don't depend on just the male gaze alone as a confirmation of our beauty. We get way more opportunities outside of just dating when it comes to our beauty. But a medium ugly woman, she has medium opportunities. Her opportunities are average at best. You know how they love calling other people average at best? The main people calling others average at best, usually they themselves are the average at best person. That's why I said it's hilarious, because it's always the people that do not have the pretty privilege who want to argue back and forth with the women who do have pretty privilege. Any woman who actually has pretty privilege would not have a problem with the exotical space. They wouldn't have a problem with our talking points because they would be able to relate. Something else about medium ugly women is they experience imposter syndrome if they're in a room full of pretty women. This is why I say some of them, it's almost like they are a big fish in a small pond. So like I said, maybe she was the baddest bitch in the trailer park. You know, maybe she had a nice body compared to the rest of the women at the dollar store. Maybe she looked pretty compared to everybody else at the gas station. The gas station is filled with homeless people. So yes, if you're surrounded by homeless people, of course, you are the Beyonce of that gas station. I'm not going to invalidate you. Your experiences are valid, but I'm just saying that I do think that you can tell just based on self-esteem levels and based on their stories that they tell about their pretty privilege. You can tell who's lying. You can tell who's telling the truth. You can tell who has experience based on how long they're able to talk about it. Like medium ugly women, they've only experienced bits and pieces of pretty privilege. They've experienced bits and pieces, and they're spread out. So being treated as beautiful is a rare thing for them. Whereas if you actually have pretty privilege, you're used to being pretty all the time. You can be pretty with a tan, pretty without a tan. You can be pretty with makeup, maybe without makeup. You still look good with sweatpants versus if you have on a club dress or something. So if you have pretty privilege, there's kind of like this, there's a multifaceted experience that you have. But medium ugly women, they only have maybe one or two things that they've experienced. Like, oh yeah, one time back in 2005, somebody said that I was pretty. Oh yeah, back in my hometown, I got asked to prom, so I'm pretty. Oh yeah, this man, he wanted to fuck me more than one time, so yeah, I must be pretty. Do you hear how random and sporadic and spaced out those experiences sound? So when it comes to medium ugly women, the quality of their privilege is lacking. So that's why sometimes medium ugly women, they feel imposter syndrome if they're surrounded by a community full of women who actually do have pretty privilege. Like in the exotical space. The way that I know that a lot of exoticals have pretty privilege is because we don't have to argue with each other about who's prettier. You know, we don't have to argue back and forth, because it's like, no, she is a pretty dark-skinned woman. I am a pretty light-skinned woman. she is a pretty curvy woman. I'm a pretty skinny woman. So anyone who's actually a part of the pretty privileged community knows that pretty privilege is not a monolith. There are some pretty women who don't interact with men at all. They're LGBT. So anytime I see a content creator trying to almost run a dictatorship, they're like, no, this is beauty. And if you don't meet this standard, then you are not beautiful. If you are not a 10 out of 10, you are not beautiful. If you do not meet the golden ratio or the red pill standard of beauty or the black or the Eurocentric standard of beauty, then you are not beautiful. Okay, that's coming from somebody who's average. They're average. That's why they're saying that, because they're projecting. They feel like they are not beautiful because they don't fit the golden ratio or because men are not texting them. So they try to project that onto you. But pretty privileged women, we have multiple sources of beauty validation. So I talk about this all the time. One of the ways that you'll know that you're pretty privileged is because you have so many different people telling you you're beautiful. You have so many different opportunities coming to you because of your beauty. You've got people wanting to date other women who look like you. You've got celebrities who look like you. Celebrities spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on their physical appearance. So if you're being constantly compared to different celebrities, obviously that's a sign that you have extreme pretty privilege. Every time you change your hair, you look like a different celebrity. Okay, yeah, that's very obvious at that point. But women who are medium, they don't have that experience, or maybe they spent their whole life and their whole childhood not having any pretty privilege. Maybe they got called ugly a whole bunch, and then maybe they changed something about themselves and then they were no longer called ugly. So that experience is still valid. Like, I'm not putting it down. I'm not putting any of this on a hierarchy. Both experiences are valid. They're just not the same. So that's why sometimes you see these quote unquote average women who have this imposter syndrome. And have you ever noticed that average women, they always want validation from pretty women? Have you guys noticed that? Have you noticed that a lot of the YouTube channels that pop onto the scene with average women claiming to be pretty, they always get mad when I personally don't validate them? They get mad when other exotical channels that talk about pretty privilege, they get mad when they don't comment on their channel or something. Average women are more validation starved than actual privileged women. So isn't it interesting how as soon as the exotical space comes out, suddenly everybody has pretty privilege. Suddenly everybody's benefiting from colorism, texturism, or featureism. Suddenly everybody has perfect experiences with men. Notice how the flip-flopping is happening? Another thing too is that pretty privileged women, we are less likely to experience femcel rage. So have you ever noticed that average women, sometimes they feel pretty, but then other times they have this extreme rage that comes with either envy. So maybe they're mad because some other pretty woman walked into the room. Maybe she was the pretty girl in the office and then you got into that job. Now she's super enraged. She's super ticked off. She's sending emails. She's throwing shots at you. So it's almost like this bipolar pretty privilege. It's kind of like a version of inconsistent pretty privilege. That's why I say you're not actually ugly. It's not that they're ugly. It's that they're medium or medium ugly. So for example, this is just a random thing I just thought of. If I wanted to measure my own beauty compared to my own internalized beauty standard, okay, do I think that 50% of my physical features are pretty? Do I think that 60% of my physical features are pretty? Do I think that 90% of my features are pretty? And I'm not talking about just face. This could be facial features, body features, your skin complexion, your hair texture, even your makeup, kind of your overall aesthetic. What percentage of yourself do you believe is pretty? That's the difference between pretty privileged women versus medium ugly women. Because usually a woman who views herself as medium ugly, she thinks that, maybe she's got one or two things going for her. But when she goes home at night, she feels deeply insecure and she really truly does feel like, oh shit, like my eyes look bad or my face is ugly or I hate my hair texture, I hate my complexion, oh my God, I hate how my body is shaped, I don't like my height, I don't like how my teeth look. Okay, so that's a sign of somebody who definitely does not identify as having pretty privilege. Because a lot of them, they think that if you view yourself as pretty privileged, then you're conceited. And it's like, no, us pretty privileged women, we don't think we're perfect. I didn't say that we are perfect women. I just said that we view ourselves as pretty. That's it. We view ourselves as pretty. We tend to meet some sort of beauty standard. This could be meeting our own internalized beauty standard. Maybe we happen to meet a popular beauty standard, kind of like Hollywood beauty, social media beauty, a black beauty standard, this Afrocentric beauty standard, a Eurocentric beauty standard. Maybe you're meeting the multiracial beauty standard. Whatever it is that's giving you access to that privilege. You have access to pretty privilege because there is some beauty standard that you're meeting, whether you realize it or not. So, for example, let's say you go into a bar and you get a free drink from a guy and he says, oh, I'm giving you this because you're pretty. Okay, so you meet that random guy's beauty standard. The guy in the bar, you meet his beauty standard. Whoever's calling you pretty, whoever's offering you free benefits, they're doing it because you meet their standard. So if somebody volunteers to do your makeup for free and she wants you to be her model or something so she can like show you off on her social media, you know how some women, they get mad because they got their hair done and then the hairstylist didn't put their picture on social media? I didn't even know that you could be jealous of that. I've never thought of that in my life. But apparently, that actually is a thing. Women are going online right now and they're saying that they don't go to black hairstylists because they think that black hairstylists are colorist and that they only post light-skinned women after they get their sew-ins done, which is obviously false. But it's like, okay, if a hairstylist is asking you to be the face of their brand, that means you do meet their beauty standard. You meet their beauty standard. That's why they want to take a picture of you with your sew-in. That's why they want to do your makeup for free. If a brand is sending you free beauty products, you meet that brand's beauty standard. They're saying that you're so pretty that I'm willing to absorb the cost of all this makeup just so I can see what it looks like on your face. That's how pretty you are. So pretty privileged women, we have multiple sources of beauty validation, whereas medium ugly women, maybe they only have one source of beauty validation. And it tends to be the male gaze from what I see on YouTube. So that's why you see a lot of medium ugly women becoming pick-me's or like going into the red pill space or something like that. Because we all know that a lot of red pill men, they love the medium uglies. They love telling women, oh, well, you're medium. You're a 5. You're average at best. So they're telling those women that they're average at best because they want to have access to those women so they can use and abuse those women and go 50-50 with them and then build themselves up financially so they can go chase after the baddies. Pretty privileged women tend to have doors open for us easily. So we have a lot of social access, whereas medium ugly women, it's very much based on the setting. It's very much so based on the setting. It's very much based on how you carry yourself. This is why we see a lot of medium ugly women throwing their vaginas at men, just throwing themselves at dusties. And it's like, sis, you're not that ugly, but she perceives herself as just being average. So she can't only compete. They have this competitive mindset and they feel like they can't compete with you in terms of pretty privilege. So she has to couple her pretty privilege or lack thereof with sexual privilege as well. So have you ever had a friend where she sleeps with your boyfriend behind your back or something, or like any guy that shows interest in you, she wants to run and go sleep with him first? Or like if she sees you flirting with a guy, she wants to run and then go like hit his DMs and then offer him sex or something like that. It's because she's competing with you. You are her beauty standard and she feels like you have pretty privilege and she doesn't. She feels like she's average. She feels like, she's only pretty if you look to the side and tilt your head when you're looking at her, or, if you look at her face down, ass up, then she's pretty. And so it's almost as if they have to try to couple their privilege. They basically have to privilege stack just to compete with your pretty privilege. Because remember, anybody that views you as their competition, that means that you're above them, or you have a chance of getting above them. That's why you are competition. Because the definition of the word competition means that you're threatened that that person could take something. So you're competing for a prize. So you'll know that you have pretty privilege when you are receiving a lot of social rewards and prizes. So the prize could be money, the prize could be status, the prize could be fame. The prize could be you're more visible. Visibility is definitely a prize because visibility is another form of currency. So that's why some girls get mad if you get more like followers and subscribers and stuff because they feel like, oh, you have more visibility because of your beauty. medium ugly women are used to being underestimated in terms of beauty. If you're medium ugly, you always have people underestimating your beauty. You always are like second best or chosen last or kind of the leftover. So medium ugly women, that's their trauma. Their trauma is being seen as second or third place or fourth place or being seen as kind of a consolation prize. The trauma of average women is that they're always the placeholder. They're always on the back burner as opposed to the trophy, if that makes sense. Whereas the pretty privileged women, our trauma has more to do with envy, a lot of people sabotaging us, a lot of people objectifying us and being shallow with us, not being able to see past our looks. That's a part of why I'm anonymous. It's because I didn't want the focus of my YouTube channel to be based on my looks. I didn't want people to be able to deflect onto my looks because as a woman that's pretty privileged, people do that all the time. They don't want to admit you're smart because if you're already pretty, that's just too much for you to be both pretty and smart. So pretty privileged women, we even have a different set of traumas. There's a different type of PTSD that comes with being pretty versus being average. The PTSD of the average woman is that she gets overlooked. She constantly feels overlooked. She constantly feels like she's not noticed. She constantly feels like she's being replaced by someone else. She has this identity swapping thing where it's like she wishes that she could trade places with the person who is pretty. She feels outshined. So that's why I say that women who make those talking points, I don't view them as ugly. I view them as just medium. They're just average. They're not ugly. They're not deformed. But they have the PTSD that comes with being average. So that's why you see some women where they yell at their friends because the friend looked better than her on her birthday. Okay, she's got the PTSD of an average woman. So that's why I said that even if you're on YouTube anonymously, you can still tell who actually has pretty privilege and who doesn't because the average women, they tend to have a lot more rage when they feel overlooked. And sometimes you'll hear pretty privileged women make jokes. And, sometimes we'll make jokes and be like, oh, girl, I'm medium ugly. But we all know deep down inside that we're not actually ugly. But I think that for average women, a lot of average women, they actually do get very triggered and extremely offended if they hear the word ugly. Have you ever been in high school or in middle school? Have you ever heard somebody call a girl ugly and then boom, that girl gets pissed off. She punches the girl in the face. I've seen that a lot, like on shows like Bad Girls Club and Baddies, all these ratchet shows. Have you ever noticed that whenever a castmate calls a medium ugly woman ugly, that woman gets so enraged that she resorts to violence? Why would you get that mad about being called ugly if you know that you're not ugly? Why would you get offended by a video about being medium ugly if you yourself are not medium ugly? I know that none of the Exoticals are medium ugly because you guys would have been offended. Like, you wouldn't have been able to relate to any of the pretty privileged content if you were medium ugly. So if you can relate to a lot of my pretty privileged content, if you're relating to the majority of the pretty privileged content on here, that means that you undeniably have pretty privilege. So you wouldn't be offended by a medium ugly video because that doesn't relate to you at all. But a lot of medium ugly girls, it's almost like some of them can be more vengeful because they feel like they have suffered injustice for not being pretty enough. Have you ever noticed that overarching theme of medium ugly women? They constantly crave revenge. They want revenge on the pretty girl. That's why you see people trying to divide and conquer in the exotical space. They love to see pretty women fighting against each other. They love to see pretty women competing with one another. They love to see pretty women being triangulated and abused and traumatized. That's why they make fun of it and say, ha ha, you thought you were a preference, now you're just a baby mama. Saying that is, they're saying that your value is low because the man didn't stay. The man left you, so ha ha, you've been abandoned, so you're not as pretty as you thought you were. You're not an actual preference. You're divorced, so you're not even pretty, you're ugly. You got cheated on with somebody who's sexy, and you're not sexy. You're not sexually desirable enough in the male gaze. That's why you got cheated on. So notice how they have a totally different mindset than a pretty privileged woman. Pretty privileged women, we have such an abundance of opportunity to the point where we're not as phased and our self-esteem doesn't get destroyed because of a breakup. If you are able to completely destroy a woman's self-esteem by breaking up with her, or if somebody gets so enraged that they're willing to risk going to prison because you called them ugly, there's no way you can convince me that girl has pretty privilege. There's no way. And I think that medium women, like medium ugly women, there's this resentment that they have against anyone who they perceive as prettier than them. So it's just like women who experience things like colorism, texturism, featureism. Have you ever met somebody who hates anybody who's lighter than them? They hate anybody who's a little bit more white passing than them. They hate anybody with a little bit of a looser hair texture. The same thing goes for pretty privilege. Women who feel like they are medium ugly, even if they're not medium ugly, women who feel like they're medium ugly, they get resentful against any woman that they perceive as having a one-up on them in terms of beauty. So you'd be surprised at some of the aspects of beauty women can be jealous of. I told you guys, I've seen women be jealous of older ladies who get a facelift. I've seen women be jealous of plastic surgeries. They get jealous of BBLs. Believe it or not, women actually do get jealous of BBLs. I've seen it. I've seen women literally get jealous. I'm like, how are you jealous of a woman's ass? Like, are you serious? But sometimes women who feel average or they feel overlooked, they're jealous of like maybe a BBL or something because the BBL is getting her sexual attention or it's kind of making her stand out or whatever. So you'd be surprised at some of the random insecurities that medium ugly women have. It could be about their teeth. I've seen that before where some women, they're insecure about their own teeth. So maybe they're jealous of a woman that has a beautiful smile. Because that is, that's something that a lot of people do get complimented on. Oh, she has such a beautiful smile. Or it could be something like eye color, facial features, having keen features or broad features, whatever it is that woman feels makes you stand out. Yes, it is possible for her to be jealous of that thing. Having long hair. We all know that, especially in the early 2000s in the Black community, having long hair was like a really big deal. Because a lot of people had that short, broken off relaxer thing going on. So if you had naturally long hair down your back, whether it was natural or relaxed or whatever, a lot of people were like jealous. So medium ugly women, they have more jealousy triggers than a pretty privileged woman. So that's why I always recommend doing everything in your power to make sure that you meet your internalized beauty standard. Because if you meet your own beauty standard, you don't feel medium ugly anymore. You don't feel like you're average anymore because you've done the work. And it's okay to admit that you have an internalized beauty standard. Everybody has one. Well, you might have multiple internal beauty standards, kind of like me. I have a fluid internalized beauty standard. So that means I like to change up my look. I like to change up my hair and stuff. So the women who are medium ugly and they want to have pretty privilege, they have not admitted to themselves that they want to be beautiful. Or maybe they feel ashamed when it comes to pursuing beauty because they've been taught by society or by religion that beauty is shallow. Or maybe they are male-centered and they're around a lot of traditional conservative men, like in the red pill space. And those men, they speak against using beauty to get attention. And so it's like they're dealing with this cognitive dissonance where they want to be the baddest bitch, they want to be the pretty girl in the room, they want to be the pretty girl walking down the street, but at the same time, they don't want to be viewed as an attention seeker because a part of pretty girl PTSD is people stereotype us as being attention seekers. They stereotype us as being whores. Whereas with medium ugly women, a lot of them are actual attention seekers. And some of them can be actual whores to dusties. So not even getting paid. I'm not talking about ex workers. I'm talking about women who are not getting paid. They're literally just sleeping with a man so they can get a text back. Or they're sleeping with a man hoping that he will ask her on a second date. And that man he doesn't even have anything going for him. So that's how you know that there's a different level of like self-esteem. Number 5, a lot of medium ugly people try to use intellectualism to compensate for not being that cute. Have you noticed that on YouTube? A lot of average women, they get mad that I make pretty privilege content. So then they'll try to make the argument that, oh, well, I'm smarter than you. We're all smarter than you. All of you exoticals are just dumb and shallow. All of us women, we are smarter. So they're trying to use their other qualities to compensate for their lack of beauty. They feel like their beauty doesn't measure up to yours. And so to even out the playing field, they try to pretend like they have better talking points or something like that. Another thing about medium ugly women is the fear of being exposed. Because, like I said in one of the last videos, a woman who's average, she feels like she only looks good from one angle, or with one hairstyle, or with one pose, or in one type of lighting, or, there's no variety when it comes to her pretty privilege. That's how I know she has a monolith experience with pretty privilege. Okay, so you're more average then. Because the average woman has probably been complimented at least once in her life. The average woman who is not deformed, she's probably been called beautiful or pretty at least once or twice. So that's why I say I don't like using the word ugly. I'll just use the phrase medium ugly. But you can tell a woman's medium ugly because she has this terror when it comes to being shown from a certain angle, or, being shown in lower lighting. That's another thing. Have you ever met women who are hella insecure about lighting? They'll be like, oh my God, no, I have to only take the photo in the middle of golden hour with the brightest lighting. Then I have to have flash on my camera. Then I have to take it in front of a mirror. Then I have to do this other angle. Then I have to bend it over and bust it wide open, and then be upside down and tilt my face to the side. And that's the only way that I look pretty. Okay, that means you're average. I'm sorry. In my opinion, that would be more of an average woman, because a woman who's actually pretty privileged, because she has multiple sources of validation, she doesn't have that same level of insecurity. So she looks pretty when she's smiling. She looks pretty when she's serious. She looks pretty when she's a little bit chunky. She looks pretty when she's a little bit skinny. She looks pretty when she's younger, when she's in her 20s, her 30s, her 40s, because she has pretty privilege on multiple levels. It's not just, oh, the only reason I'm pretty is because I am young. So like I said, if your pretty privilege is only accessed because of one or two things, that's not pretty privilege. That's more like average. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with being medium or quote unquote average. But you know how some people say, oh, well, light-skinned women, she's not pretty, she's just light-skinned. It's like, okay, why is it okay for you to call somebody else average? But then if I clap back and say, okay, this is what makes you average, then suddenly it's a problem. And by the way, don't let me determine your perception of yourself. These videos are not created so I can control other people's self-perception. I believe that deep down inside, you know whether or not you have pretty privilege. Deep down inside, you know whether or not you're medium ugly. So I don't have to tell you. Number 7, medium ugly women are more likely to be social justice warriors when it comes to lookism. So they're fighting tooth and nail when it comes to desirability politics. They want to argue about who's more desirable and who's not, and why not, and how it's not fair. Because life hasn't been fair for them. Because we all know that obviously society is extremely shallow. Society worships beauty. So it gives beautiful people an unfair advantage. So if they feel like life is unfair, it means that they don't have privilege in that area. Any area of your life where you feel like life has consistently been unfair, it's because you are underprivileged in that area. So medium ugly women, it's like they have the breadcrumbs of beauty. Okay, so that's why I say they're not actually ugly. They're probably just medium. So they still receive the breadcrumbs of beauty. Maybe they're considered pretty from one angle. Maybe they're pretty in the dark with the lights off. Maybe they're pretty when they layer 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 filters. But receiving breadcrumbs is not the same experience as having a feast. So that's why you still see a lot of average women feeling validation starved. Because remember, average women, there are more average women in this world than pretty privileged women. And I know that. So that's why I wanted to make a community where all of us can have a safe space, because obviously it's not safe for us amongst, being in a sea of women who identify as average or medium ugly. Obviously it's not going to be safe for us. So that's why we need our own communities. That's why you see a lot of pretty privileged women isolating themselves and only hanging out in certain spaces. That's why you see a lot of pretty privileged women acting exclusive. You know how they say like, oh, she's acting brand new, or she's stuck up, she don't speak to nobody. Well, yeah, because she can't. She can't just speak to anybody, because, some people, they have the average experience and she doesn't. And so because of that, she has a different set of social traumas. A lot of medium ugly women have social anxiety that comes from being overlooked. They feel overshadowed if they're surrounded by a lot of pretty privileged women. Whereas pretty privileged women, we have the experience of like, we feel hyper visible. So a lot of people are studying us, they're stalking us, they're randomly memorizing what we say in our YouTube videos, they're watching our every move, they're mimicking everything we do. So it's like being hyper visible. And don't be a pretty privileged woman who also has a glow up. Oh no, now you're really triggering people because you're telling me you were already pretty privileged and then you decided to also get your teeth fixed and then you decided to lose weight. Then you decided to also make your hair healthy and long. Oh no, how dare you do that? Now you're going to experience even more scrutiny. And so that's where you get the psychology of these average women who will try to save photos of celebrities looking ugly or like having an unflattering angle or something. They try to memorize your flaws. They try to save pictures of you when you used to be fat or like before your glow up. They want to remind you of who you used to be because they're hoping that the fat girl still exists within you. You know, they're hoping that that leveled down version of you still exists in your psyche. So they want to psychologically torment you and they want to emotionally dysregulate you by arguing with a version of you that no longer exists. Because have you ever been around somebody where they'll be like, oh, well, I remember when you used to be fat. I remember when you used to have braces. You used to wear glasses. They'll try to bring up a version of you that no longer exists. And it's like they refuse to acknowledge your beauty. They refuse to acknowledge your progress. And that's another thing too. A lot of women get livid if you go from average or quote unquote medium ugly to having pretty privilege. Oh, hell no. That's extremely triggering because then the other medium ugly women, they feel like, wait a minute. So she had the potential to have pretty privilege. That means I have the potential too. So like, what am I doing? So if you see these average women leveling up and now they have pretty privilege, that makes the other average women feel annoyed because they feel like she surpassed them now. So she's no longer average anymore. She no longer fits in with the regulars anymore, if that makes sense. She no longer fits in with the rest of the crowd. Now she's standing out as a pretty privileged woman. And then the average women, they feel socially left behind. So you see that dynamic playing out even here on YouTube. Some women, they feel socially left behind because they see you leveling up. They see you looking better and better each day. They see you aging like fine wine. You look better in your 30s than you did in your 20s. You look better in your 20s than you did as a teenager. You learned how to do your makeup. You learned how to do your hair. You learned a skincare routine. So they're mad because they can see your beauty in real time. They can see your beauty developing in real time because I don't believe that pretty privilege is a monolith. It's not this static thing where it's like, oh no, you just stay the same. No, women can develop their beauty. They can level up their beauty. They can tweak their beauty. So in my case, as someone with a fluid beauty standard, I like to tweak my beauty all the time. So I will change my hair color. You know, that's an example of tweaking your beauty. You change your hair color up. You change your makeup look. You change your style. So some women get mad because not only do they not have the beauty, like not only were they not born with the beauty, but then on top of that, they also lack beauty skills. Because if you have a medium ugly woman who has beauty skills, okay, well, she can just go to being pretty privileged by just doing her makeup correctly or losing the weight or getting braces or whatever. So she can still access the pretty privilege. She may have accessed it later in life, but it's still valid. It doesn't matter how long you had the pretty privilege. That's not as important. What's more important is, did you meet your own internalized beauty standard, yes or no? And the reason people get mad when I talk about this is because they put my YouTube channel on a pedestal. So they think that everything I'm saying is law. They think everything I'm saying is like the end all be all. And I try to tell you guys all the time, no, do your own research, create your own internalized beauty standard. Figure out what beauty means to you. Don't listen to these random YouTube, including me. Don't listen to just what random YouTubers have to say about beauty. You want to look inside yourself. Okay, do I feel beautiful? Do I feel beautiful when I wake up in the morning? Do I feel beautiful when I'm in front of a man? Do I feel beautiful around all white people? Do I feel beautiful around all black people? Those are all questions that you want to ask yourself. Medium ugly women, the answer is not going to be consistent. A medium ugly woman might feel beautiful in the trailer park, but she doesn't feel beautiful in the mall, for example. She doesn't feel beautiful at the beach when there are thousands of other women in bikinis with nice bodies. So that's one of the ways that I like to hold myself accountable when it comes to my beauty. It's like, okay, is there any area where I do not feel beautiful? And if so, can I work on that part of my beauty? Do I feel beautiful when I have my wig on? Do I feel beautiful when I take the wig off? Because I noticed that some women, I told you guys that whenever I do wear wigs, I take my wigs off in public. And I know that in the black community, that's viewed as like taboo. Like, why would you take your wig off? You know, it's viewed as like embarrassing, I guess. But I never viewed it as embarrassing because I still feel beautiful with the wig off. So yes, I have gone to the pool. I told you guys like a couple months ago, I literally was at a pool party. It was at this co-ed social club. And I took my wig off and I got in the pool. I took my wig off. My natural hair was out. My natural hair is dark and curly. The wig was dark and curly. So it wasn't like, oh my God, who's that? Like, so that's a question that you can ask yourself though is, when do I feel beautiful and when do I not feel beautiful? Because whenever you don't feel beautiful, that's your body, that's your nervous system trying to tell you, hey, I don't feel beautiful without the wig. So I need to work on getting my edges back. I need to work on growing my hair back out. But women who are medium ugly, I would say if 50% of your pretty privilege, if you only feel like you have maybe 50% pretty privilege or something, that's a sign of more of like an average woman. That's more of an average woman's experience, where it's like half the time she feels pretty, but then the other half she feels inferior. So she's working on the inferiority complex. Maybe she's trying to overcome it. And that's fine. This channel would be for you as well because you're taking accountability. You're saying, hey, I have an inferiority complex when it comes to my teeth or something, so I'm going to save up money and get braces. Okay, so you're taking accountability. So I'm not talking shit about those types of women. I'm talking shit about the types of women who lie and pretend like they have this pretty privileged experience and this pretty privileged mindset, but you can tell based on how they express themselves that they actually don't. They don't feel as pretty as what they're saying. And they have a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to their own beauty. That's why maybe they feel like they only can take a picture at a certain angle, or, you know, they don't want you. You know, the women who are like catfish, basically? Have you ever met a woman like that where maybe in her picture, she looks unrecognizable in person versus her pictures, or the women where they Photoshop their dating app pictures so much so to the point where the person is like shocked, or maybe they're like obese and then they only show photos from the neck up. Okay, so that's a sign that that woman is struggling with feeling average. She feels imposter syndrome in her own beauty, or she feels like an imposter compared to other women who have legit pretty privilege. Medium ugly women, they deal with a lot more fatigue. So I call it lookism fatigue. So there's this stress. There's a stress that comes with their beauty. Like when I get up in the morning or if I'm getting ready for something, I feel like I have more of a playfulness when it comes to my beauty. I like to play with my beauty. So I'm viewing it as an expression of my femininity. I'm not stressed out like, oh my God, I've got the weight of the world on my shoulders because I got so many ugly qualities that I hate about myself. I got to change all of them. No. So you can tell the difference. One of those women has the average woman's experience, and one of them identifies as pretty privilege. And by the way, it's not about whether or not I validate your pretty privilege. This channel is not a place where I'm going to be able to tell you, oh, you have pretty privilege or you don't. You've never seen me pull up pictures of people and be like, oh, well, this woman is ugly and this woman has more pretty privilege. No. What you'll see is me asking you. I always reflect my content back to the viewer, kind of like a mirror. It's like, do you feel like you have pretty privilege? Does your lifestyle align with your own standards of what you believe pretty privilege is? If the answer is yes, then you have pretty privilege. So there's no reason to be offended by a video about ugly women. This is not a channel for women who are unsure about pretty privilege or for women who demonize pretty privilege. This space is for women who stand 10 toes down in their pretty privilege. So they stand 10 toes down, they can relate to the content, they're working on themselves. Pretty privilege doesn't mean I think I'm perfect. It just means I think I'm pretty. Another symptom of feeling invisible and then being enraged is they have this hyper awareness of their own flaws and then they project that onto others. So let's say she feels medium ugly because of her nose. She will randomly call out your nose, and then you'll be thinking, wait, what? My nose? Like, I've never even paid attention to my nose. And that's because you identify as pretty privileged. So you don't hyperfixate on flaws. But medium ugly women, they have this tendency to hyperfixate on other people. They have a tendency to externalize everything. So that's why they're focused on what are her flaws? What makes her not look as pretty? How do I compare to her? How is she treated? Does she think she's better than me? Oh, she's too black and ugly to think she's better than me. Let me try to say that she's black and ugly so I can make it look like she's inferior to me. Okay, women who do stuff like that, these are women who identify as medium ugly. Number 8, they have bitterness against dating apps, social media, or spaces that reward beauty. So they have bitterness maybe against Hollywood, against the music industry. Anything where beauty is celebrated, they have a lot of bitterness against that. Because, they are not picked first. They're always second best. They're always third or fourth choice. After everybody else has quit, or, the pretty privileged women went off to better opportunities, then she finally has the pretty privilege. Another thing is they feel like their existence doesn't matter unless they do something exceptional. They feel like they have to be exceptionally good at something in order to be noticed. That's why they try to call out pretty women, and they'll say, well, you're not even that good of a content creator. Your talking points are boring. Your channel is boring. Oh, you're not even that talented. You can't really sing that well. You can't really act that well. They're saying that because they themselves are average when it comes to looks. And so they have always had to compensate with something else. So that's why they call out the pretty women who are not doing anything exceptional. Because they are not accepted by others in their normal state. They can't be mediocre and be accepted. Because, their looks are already mediocre, so they're like, oh shit, I got to do something else in order to stand out. So that's why they get mad when they see these women who are pretty privileged, and because other people perceive that woman as pretty privileged, she gets accepted whether she's the most talented or not. They also feel like a background character. So these women, they have trauma about being a sidekick. Have you ever noticed this? A lot of average women, they do get called sidekicks a lot. They do get called second best, or, you're just a fake ripoff version of so-and-so other person. So average women, they have more trauma around that. So they feel like if they looked better, then, their life would finally start. They would finally be the queen bee. They'd finally be able to take your position. So they view you as being in a higher social position than them. And they have the trauma of feeling like a sidekick. They feel like the background character in their own life. So it's like they always feel like they're behind biracial women. They're behind white women. They're behind light-skinned women. They're behind dark-skinned women. So there's something about them that makes them feel like they're always going to be a sidekick, always in the background. Something else medium ugly women will do is hypersexualization. So these are the women who feel the pressure to post the thirst traps, or they are leaning into that aesthetic. They're leaning into the hypersexualization because their face card is declining. They don't have the face card to compete with billions of women on social media, for example. Maybe their face card can't compete with billions of women on social media. Maybe their hair or whatever it is about them, they feel like they can't compete. Because remember, they have a competitive mindset because they have a scarcity mindset. So they feel like they can't compete, so they have to post their butt. They have to post their boobs. They have to do something more shocking and attention grabbing. And a lot of them have obsessions with surgeries, makeup, filters, not just for beauty, but literally for visibility and survival. And I'm not saying that they're just like regular pretty privileged women. I feel like as pretty privileged women, all of that stuff is optional. So yes, we have fun with makeup. We have fun with like filters and weaves and all that, but it's not like an obsession. Like, oh my God, I'm willing to commit crimes in order to have this wig. Have you ever met women like that or seen women on the news where they will literally risk going to prison because they wanted to rob the beauty supply store? So they're stealing thousands of dollars worth of wigs because that's how obsessed they are with, having these different beauty enhancements. They'll be over here robbing a beauty supply. They're taking a $20 cheap ass synthetic wig. They're taking the cheapest hair that's right there on the rack that's easy to steal. And it's like, okay, that's a form of hyperfixation. and more of an obsession with beauty enhancements because she feels like she needs way more in order to meet the baseline standard of visibility. So you can still slay with your sweatpants on. She can't wear sweatpants and feel like she's slaying. She can't wear basic jeans. Have you ever met those women who say, oh, you're masculine if you have short hair? You're masculine if you wear pants. Well, no, you feel masculine if you wear those things because you don't identify as being pretty privileged. So you feel like pants will take away and destroy all of your femininity, all of your privilege. So if pants are destroying your entire sense of femininity, then you feel like you never had any then. That means you didn't have any. If all it takes is chopping off a couple inches of hair for you to feel ugly, then that means you never identified as pretty. So that's why you see average women who are the most obsessed with the beauty enhancements, but then at the same time, they'll turn around and try to shame you for using beauty enhancements. Well, it's because when you're pretty privileged and you also use enhancements, you're showing off your beauty even more. So she feels like you cheated. It's like you were already prettier than me, so why did you have to also get an enhancement? She feels like she's behind you. I think I'm on number 10, contentious posting. Deliberately posting controversial or hot takes to spark engagement. Throwing shade at conventionally attractive people or throwing shade at people who they perceive as having pretty privilege. So these women, they're more dependent. They're dependent upon social media. That's why you see people, they will try to stalk your social media. They're counting how many likes you're getting. They count how many subscribers you have compared to them because average women have more of a dependency on social media for validation. They're not like pretty privileged women. Pretty privileged women, they get likes on social media, but we also get likes in real life. People actually like us in real life. They actually compliment us in real life. So there is no obsession. We don't have the same level of obsession about social media. But the women who feel average and overshadowed or they feel outshined, yeah, those women are depending on those numbers. They're depending on the subscribers. They're depending on the dating app likes. They're depending on a text message from a man. Because that's the only way that they feel visible. The only time they feel visible is when that man texts her at 2 a.m. Another attention-seeking behavior of an average woman is sabotaging or withdrawing when ignored. So these are the women who will ghost their YouTube channels when they don't feel validated enough. They will delete content or they will delete photos of themselves if they feel unseen. So it's this mindset of why bother? And they secretly hope that other people will chase after them. That's why they're doing that. So it's almost like a way of throwing a tantrum in a way. Or sometimes they will lash out, so these are the women who they will start conflict with the woman that they feel has more pretty privilege and social power than them. They want to start conflict with whoever they perceive as the queen bee. So they're shooting for the top in hopes that they can take some of the breadcrumbs of her social status. So they have this core wound of never feeling like they are impressive. Because beauty, having pretty privilege, that means that people are impressed by how good you look. They're impressed by your aesthetic. They're impressed by how you did your hair, your makeup, your pretty smile, your pretty complexion. They're impressed by that. But the woman who is medium ugly, her core wound is feeling like she doesn't matter. She doesn't matter in comparison to you. So she has this belief that the only way to feel visible is to be as extreme as possible. So they may hide behind being blunt, for example, blunt girly. They may hide behind all of these super extreme confrontational personality traits. So these are the women who are loud. They're jumping on tables. They're shaking their ass when it's not a twerking restaurant. They're doing all of these outlandish things for attention because they don't have the true privilege that they really wanted, which was pretty privilege. If they truly believed that they had pretty privilege, they'd be able to rest in it. You know how they say rest in your femininity? Pretty privileged women, we know how to rest in our pretty privilege. But women who feel average, they can never rest. They feel like they are constantly chasing. They're constantly sprinting. They're constantly running a marathon in hopes that they can finally attain the pretty privilege that they've always wanted. And it's almost like some of them, with every beauty problem they solve, they create another problem. Have you ever been around those women who are like botched, for example, like with surgeries and stuff? So it's like they were trying to seek after beauty, but they accidentally created a new problem. And that comes from lack of beauty skill. So they're not studying like what looks good on them. So these are the women who maybe they actually do get a really bad nose job. Maybe they actually do get a really horrible wig that looks bad on them with the crusty edges and everything. So those are the women who are average, and then when they try to enhance their beauty, they end up taking away from it. So it's like they're fighting a losing battle. They're constantly in this uphill battle with their own internalized beauty standard. And some people, they'll try to say like, oh, you should just change your beauty standard. I kind of disagree with that. I really do, because I feel like it's not authentic. I don't think that women should just create this inauthentic beauty standard in order to soothe their own egos. That doesn't sound smart to me. Like, okay, I'm 500 pounds and my beauty standard is being skinny, so let me just change my beauty standard to being 500 pounds. Well, that's disingenuous. You know damn well your beauty standard is not 500 pounds, so that's why you feel insecure. So my theory on that is that the real way to feel like you have pretty privilege is to go ahead and meet your internal beauty standard, because even if people make fun of you for losing the weight, or they make fun of you for changing your makeup or whatever, those people are not you. So you're the one that's happy in the end because you achieved your goal. So lying to yourself and saying, oh, well, beauty doesn't matter to me, or I don't have to meet my internal beauty standard. Okay, that's fine, but society is still going to reward beauty. Society still worships beauty. So trying to tell women that they shouldn't pursue pretty privilege, that's stupid, because if you take yourself out of the game, guess what? Somebody else is going to play the game and win. So the women who want to be beautiful, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be beautiful. There's nothing wrong with wanting to improve your beauty, whether you have pretty privilege or you don't have it, but you would like to attain it. This channel supports both groups. As long as you're not the type that is like trying to compete or compare against other people. But changing your standard, changing your internal beauty standard, that does not erase the fact that you're still being judged by others. You know, it doesn't erase the fact that some women are still going to receive pretty privilege. So that's why I say that you should just go ahead and determine what kind of pretty privilege do you want. Because I talk on this channel about how there are many different versions of beauty. You've got the social media beauty, kind of like this IG baddie, kind of like the Fashion Nova models and all that sort of aesthetic. You've got the Hollywood beauty, the women who look like pop stars and actresses, and they've got the veneers and the makeup and the glamorous hair and sparkly clothes. There's that version of beauty. There's natural beauty. So the women who they wear less makeup, you know, there's less enhancements there. So they're not wearing lashes or anything. It's like they're natural lashes. Maybe they don't have on any foundation. So they have a really good skincare routine. So a better strategy, instead of trying to put people down, is to just go ahead and figure out, what kind of pretty privilege do I want? Why do I want it? Why do I want pretty privilege? That's an important question that a lot of average women don't ask themselves. And that's why they are very bad at emotional regulation. They're so dysregulated by your privilege to the point where they will go into a manic episode trying to bash you. And it's like, no, she's emotionally dysregulated because she doesn't meet her internalized beauty standard. So even if I think she's pretty, clearly she doesn't think she's pretty because she's not acting like someone who thinks she's pretty. And that's why she's getting the same results as an ugly woman. It's because she thinks that she's ugly. But the bottom line is that society punishes people for being ugly. Society punishes you for being beautiful, but they also punish people for being ugly as well. So which punishment would I rather have? I'd rather be punished for being beautiful than be punished for being ugly. So it's like, pick a struggle. The average women, they haven't picked a struggle. That's why they're average. Because they haven't sat down and thought about how they want to socially strategize to get what they want. And so that's why they have almost like this bipolar experience with pretty privilege. One moment they have pretty privilege, the next moment they're being perceived as ugly and they're being looked over. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because you didn't pick a struggle. Which struggle do you want? So it's like, average women, they have both struggles. They have the struggle of being pretty and the struggle of being ugly. That's not who this channel is geared towards. It's geared towards women who identify as pretty privileged, or they want to become pretty privileged and meet their own beauty standard. And for the people who are like, oh, well, Exoticals United, there are a whole bunch of systems in place that favor certain types of beauty over others. I agree. And I also agree that it's not fair. And so the question is, okay, which one do you want to do? Do you want to be a social justice warrior? Do you want to be pretty privileged, or do you want to be a social justice warrior? There is no wrong answer. Some people are activists and, they are meant to like hold up the signs and create YouTube channels complaining about statues. And, some women are better at that. But I personally, I don't want to spend the rest of my life as a social justice warrior. I like the ease that comes with pretty privilege. I like the soft life that comes with being pretty privileged. I like the social power that comes with beauty. And I'm not afraid to say it. I like the validation. Hell yeah. Oh, well, you just want attention. You just want validation. You just want to think you're cute. Hell yeah. Yes, yes, and yes. Oh, well, you just want the benefits that come with pretty privilege. Duh. Oh, and for the people who believe in objective beauty, everybody has biases. Okay, so I don't know why people try to sound so intellectual, and they'll be like, oh, well, I'm logical, I'm unbiased. This is my unbiased opinion. Okay, there's no such thing as an unbiased opinion. That's literally an oxymoron. Everything that you are thinking in your mind is shaped by your worldview. So that includes beauty. That includes how you perceive beauty. So, those girls that say, oh, I'm not conventionally attractive. Okay, who is conventionally attractive and who is conventionally unattractive? Because remember, anytime you support a beauty standard, you're also saying that there is a standard of ugly as well. So I've noticed that there are some Black women who follow Eurocentric standards of beauty, or they assume that everybody else does, which is false. But maybe they follow a Eurocentric standard of beauty, and so they think that because they're not white, that they're not beautiful. And anybody who actually has any form of intelligence knows that whiteness does not equal automatic beauty, obviously. Neither does mixed race or blackness and dark skin. Dark skin doesn't automatically equal beauty either. I said what the fuck I said. So I think when you're pursuing your own pretty privilege, you have to ask yourself what your version of beauty is that you want, because there are many different versions. Also, what are you trying to attain with your pretty privilege? You can always tell what a woman is trying to attain based on her content. So if a woman says, I have pretty privilege because a man texted me after we had sex, okay, that means that she has a male-centered version of pretty privilege. So if you are not male-centered, or if you don't want to only use pretty privilege to get a man, that's not a good talking point. That's not going to be very helpful. Or if somebody says, I have pretty privilege because I'm a successful ex-worker, if you don't want to be an ex-worker, that content is not applicable to you. So that's why I never take advice from someone I wouldn't want to trade lives with. To be completely honest, I'm actually not a huge fan of the concept of advice just in general, because I feel like you have your own intuition for a reason. You're the only one who truly knows yourself the best. You're the only one with your own memories and traumas. So that's why on this channel, I try not to tell you guys what to do, because I trust your intelligence. We're all adults here. We can make the best decisions for ourselves. So anytime you see someone trying to assert dominance or power over you in regards to pretty privilege, I side-eye that person, and I automatically think, oh no, she doesn't have pretty privilege. Because anyone who actually does, they don't try to use their pretty privilege as a form of dominance over somebody else, because they know that other women can have a different type of pretty privilege. So there is no end-all be-all version of beauty. Another trigger is that your pretty privilege granted you more power than theirs. So have you ever met women who maybe they are pretty, or maybe they have pretty privilege, but they didn't know how to use it? And so they're still broke, they're still living a dusty lifestyle, they're still struggling, and then they see you, and maybe they perceive you as not being as pretty as them, or maybe they perceive you as, oh, you're on the same level as me, or you're blacker than me, so you shouldn't have more pretty privilege than me, or you shouldn't have more benefits for your pretty privilege than what I do. That's another form of rage as well, because they're confused. They're like, wait a minute, how is it that this person is blacker than me, but they have a better life than me? Or they've attained more benefits from their pretty privilege than I did. Well, that has more to do with your actual social climbing skills. Because remember, you want to go to where your pretty privilege is celebrated. You want to try to use your pretty privilege to gain wealth or visibility. So just because a person has pretty privilege, it doesn't always mean that they're going to live the soft life. We've seen plenty of women with pretty privilege who are living these horrible lives. So I think that's another thing too that happens kind of in the pretty privileged community. You'll see pretty women who are struggling. Maybe their relationships are dusty, or maybe they're super male centered. And so they can't experience the full benefits of their pretty privilege. We saw that with Pretty Reality on her channel. She doesn't experience the fullness of pretty privilege according to her own talking points. And so that's why it's a very male-centered type of mindset. We all know that men are extremely fickle. We all know that men are not reliable. And so that's why I always encourage you guys to just view the male gaze as a source of micro-validation, as opposed to centering your perception of pretty privilege only around a man. Because remember, by doing that, you're giving the men the power. You're saying that the men have all the power over me, and if the men don't pick me, then that means that like I failed or I'm ugly. Also, have you ever wondered why women get so mad when they feel excluded from the pretty girl club? It's because this isn't just about looks. It's about power, protection, proximity to privilege, and public validation. So in the exotical community, we are publicly validating our own pretty privilege, and we're publicly validating each other. So whenever a new content creator comes along and they feel excluded, or they feel like they're not a part of my audience, I notice I trigger their rejection wounds. So they feel like they've been denied access. You know, they feel like they have lost a part of their social identity. So that's another reason why you see some people lashing out really bad. And then they'll try to pretend like they never supported me from the beginning when they were always riding my clit since day one. Like, look at some of the biggest detractors of the exotical space. These are women who used to be all up in the comment section over here. So it's almost like as soon as they feel this rejection, then they go into this manic episode of anger. They become enraged. And it's because they were already struggling with imposter syndrome anyway. But what do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.